Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Books with Nate. And today I have a book haul video for you on this beautiful, bright, sunny April spring day. Now, these are not the most popular books in the social media sphere, I gotta admit, but I think you'll find a few gems in here. These are some personal highlights of mine, and I'm excited to show you what I found. And if you find yourself at the end of the video wanting to see more, feel free to subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And here we go. First up on the list is The Rune Lords by David Farland. I believe this was his fantasy pen name, but his real name was David Wolverton. You maybe have seen some of his books. That was like his sci-fi name, I think. This was a series that I found from another booktuber, Jonathan Cohn. I believe it's like one of his favorite series. What stuck out to me was the magic system. It relies on the existence of essentially like distinct bodily features that, there's like brawn and grace and wit, and you're able to get these runes essentially like through this ritual or something assigned to you. I only read the first 50 pages or so of this book a few months ago, and I really liked it. Essentially, these attributes can then be transferred from one individual to another in a process known as giving an endowment. And so like lords can get a lot of endowments. They are well endowed, and they are known as rune lords because I have all these endowments on them. So, I found the first 50 pages to be kind of like, it's an old school fantasy. Found it pretty interesting, and it's something I want to get to eventually. Next up is The Devil's Armor by John Marco. This is the second book in his Bronze Knight series. I have not read a single John Marco book, but I have found a few at the used bookstore that I go to a lot, and I just found the covers to be interesting. I need to find the first one still, and the third one. I think they have the third one, but I just haven't bought it yet for whatever reason. I've heard good things about him. I know a few other booktubers like him a lot, and I hope to find the first book soon because I want to read this series. I think it kind of, some people love it, some people don't, but it's a series that interests me. I'm not going to try and go over the summary because this is the second book, and I don't really know what the first book is about. So next up on the list is The Web of the Chosen by Jack L. Chalker. Just look at that cover. I mean, this is a sci-fi novel, as you can probably tell. This is something that I've seen at the used bookstore that I go to quite a few times, and I'm like, am I gonna read this? Do I want it? Then I finally decided to do it, and I bought it, and I read the back of it. It follows this guy named Bar Holiday, and it seems like he's sort of this guy sent by this company to see if they can terraform a planet to exploit its resources, and then eventually comes up against this alien race and on this planet, and he sort of met his match. They weren't expecting this. It seems like a very type A kind of guy, so I'm excited to get to this. It's pretty short. I want to get more into this sort of short, kind of weird 70s 80s sci-fi, but we'll see when I get to that. Next up is The Black Sun Rising by C.S. Friedman. I believe she's written quite a few things, but this is labeled as sci-fi, but it's at the very least sci-fantasy. I bought the first 3 books in this series because they were at the used bookstore, and I love these Michael Whalen covers. I'll show the other 2 here. So it's kind of like a sci-fantasy. Essentially, humans have colonized a planet in the future, and they come into this natural force on this planet called the Fae, and it can like prey upon the human mind, and it kind of jumps forward thousands of years, I think, after that. And I think humans have found this sort of balance with the Fae through sorcerers. I mean, that's fantasy, but I guess Dune is kind of like a sci-fantasy too, so there's that. But I thought the premise of it sounded pretty cool, and I think it'd be right up my alley. Plus, I'm somebody who judges a book by its cover, and I think these covers are awesome. Next up is The Sunset Warrior Cycle by Eric V. Lustbader. I bought the first 4 in these because, speaking of judging a book by its cover, I just thought these covers were pretty cool. I don't know. I think it's essentially, it follows I think it's probably like a sci-fi fantasy type thing again, but it follows the finest swordsman of the freehold, as sharp and deadly as his blade. Yet as the ancient city faltered, Ronan alone refused to pledge himself to any of the powerful Sardine who ruled the crumbly underground world of levels. I'm hoping this isn't a romance novel, because look, you can see author of The French Kiss, the word lust is in his last name, and they use the word sensual to describe someone on the back page, so hoping it's not a big romance novel. But yeah, I just found this cover art to be pretty cool and interesting, and I think it's like 5 or 6 books. I've only found the first 4 so far, and it seems like it's something that kind of has pretty decent reviews, so hoping to get to this sometime soon. We'll see, but I thought the cover art was pretty cool. And also, I'm not against romance in novels. It just has to be done a certain way for me, and I'm not a big, star-crossed lovers type person. So that's that on romance. So next up is a Jack Vance novel. He's a famous sci-fi writer. I've had a few of his books. He's known for the Dying Earth series, which is popular sort of sci-fantasy work that I think served as a big inspiration for a lot of authors. But here we have, I believe it's pronounced Lyonnaise. It's a fantasy novel. I think it's made up of a few books, potentially. But I found this at the used bookstore, like everything else. I've always wanted to read some Jack Vance because I've just heard great things about him. I'm hoping to get to this at some point. It seems kind of old school fantasy that takes place kind of underwater. Seems kind of Little Mermaid-esque, but we'll see. So next up are some C.J. Cherryh novels. I've been on a bit of a book buying binge for C.J. Cherryh. Don't know why. She's a well-known sci-fi author who's written a lot in sci-fi world, also some fantasy work. But she's really known for her Alliance Union universe, and I've recently just kind of been interested in trying to get more into her work. I believe most of her work is pretty focused on like a human emotional level versus kind of these like grand epic scopes. Just to show 2, I bought the Pride of Shannara, I believe. It follows, it's part of this Alliance Union universe, and it follows a outsider or a human who essentially comes into contact with this sort of lion-esque cat people called the Hani, and then it kind of, I think, follows from there. But yeah, it just seemed, I've heard good things about these Shannara novels, and I want to read like Down Below Station, and then I also want to read the Fated Sun trilogy. This is the second book in the Fated Sun trilogy. I want to collect the 3 versions like this because I just find the cover art to be pretty cool. This follows like an alien, like a humanoid, like very much humans, or I think they're humans, called the Marie, and they're essentially like the Fremen from Dune, so you're kind of getting it from their perspective, and their culture is kind of focused around a caste-based system and warfare, being good fighters, and they fight as mercenaries for this other alien race who have been at war with the humans, which I believe is connected to the Alliance Union universe. And in this war, the Marie have been very stubborn, and they're kind of like set in their ways, which has kind of led to their own demise, and you're kind of seeing the last of the organized Marie, I believe. It's something that I want to read more of hers, just because I think her premises are really interesting. It's something I just want to, I'd love to read more of C.J. Cherryh's work. And next up, we have The Chronicles of the Black Company by Glen Cook, Now, this is a series of books that I know served as a big inspiration for Ian C. Esselmont and Steven Erikson for the Malazan world. It follows a mercenary company called the Black Company and kind of just goes through their history. It's a military fantasy novel. Yeah, this is just, I think, can serve as, if I'm looking for more Malazan kind of stuff, I've heard this is where to go, or, want to read something in between, but don't want to read Malazan necessarily. I think that's something I would definitely read. And then next up, we have The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. I had a paperback edition of this, but I found this like kind of old hardback, and I was like, this is something I want to read. This is the reading experience I want from a King book. So it's a fantasy book set in Midworld, where the Dark Towers series takes place, and I think it takes place a few hundred years before, and there's some important characters that we hear about in the Dark Towers series. I've only read the first four, and I want to get back into it, but I also want to read some stuff that's connected to the Dark Tower series a little bit more. I think it's kind of a children's story, but I could be wrong. I mean, it's Stephen King, so how, childish can you get, I guess. But yeah, I'm looking forward to reading this. Once I get back into the Dark Tower series, I love that series, and I've taken a little bit of a break from it, but I want to get back into it. And last but not least is The Way of Adan by Philip Chase. This is one of my favorite booktubers, and the fact that he published a book I think is awesome. I'm about halfway through it right now, and it's been pretty good so far. I really like the sort of the history and the inspiration behind it, sort of this religious war set, what I see kind of in, well, it's like medieval Northern Europe, but you can very much tell who is Wales and who is, England, essentially. I think the characters are pretty compelling and interesting, and I'm just happy to be reading something by him because I think he's really smart and he knows what he's doing, and the book is really well polished, very smooth, and I'm really excited to finish it, and I plan to do a review by the end of the month. I'm taking it kind of slow. After finishing Malazan book, it's always hard to get back into like other fantasy, but I'm kind of forcing myself into it, and it's good, and I'm glad I'm doing that because I think this book definitely deserves attention for sure. And Philip Chase, if you're watching this, you deserve all the praise you're getting. So that's it from me today. Feel free to subscribe and like this video if you want. Leave a comment down below if you read any of these books, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, and I will talk to you soon.